If you live in Nova Scotia and follow the news, you've likely heard the name Brent Bowden, whose story first came to public attention in 2024. Since then, the matter has received coverage across various media platforms, with different perspectives highlighting the concerns around workplace experiences, accountability, and the broader question of systemic fairness. Today, we bring a special panel discussion hosted by Ian Mohammed and recorded here in our studio, where community leaders and advocates share their views on the issues raised. As part of our commitment to balanced reporting, Community Update reached out to relevant institutions for comment prior to this release. We now take you to the discussion.
Hello, and welcome to our panel discussion concerning Constable Brent Bowden, who works for the Truro Police Services. I'm Ian Mohammed, and I'm the moderator for today's discussions. Imagine a province of Nova Scotia where our police departments may feel they have the freedom to exercise racism without fear of accountability. Does it exist in Nova Scotia? If so, what are the true consequences? It could be a reality closer than what many people may think. That's what we're discussing today. We have gathered an excellent panel to navigate this complex issue. Starting on my far left is Susie Hansen, who is the provincial MLA for Halifax Needham since 2021. She serves as the official opposition critic for African Nova Scotian Affairs, the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism, the Human Rights Commission, Communications Nova Scotia, and also Housing. In addition, she's the NDP caucus whip. Next is John Danny Walsh, who is a well-respected retired police officer from Trenton, Nova Scotia, who was awarded the Police Exemplary Service Medal from the Governor-General of Canada in 1997. On my right is Kirk Johnson, who was born in North Preston and experienced racism by the Halifax Regional Police. He was stopped an incredible 29 times in 2 weeks in 1998. And one time, Halifax police even seized his black Mustang for not having insurance, despite Kirk showing him his insurance card. Also, he is an amazing former boxer with 41 professional fights. That includes 37 wins, of which 27 were by knockout.
Kirk Johnson.
And on my far right, we have Reuben Rocky Coward, a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces and is a human rights advocate who has won 29 out of 30 human rights cases. Now, because of his 35 years of hard work, this has led to a successful $150 million discrimination class action settlement against the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, the format for today's discussions is we'll be covering 5 sections concerning Constable Bowden's experience. In each section, I'll start by giving a brief background, then I'll ask one panel member a question, and they'll have 2 minutes to respond. Afterwards, the discussion will be open to all panel members for approximately 4 minutes. So panel members, let's begin with the first section talking about the original incident involving the Truro Police Services. I'll start off by giving our viewers a brief background. There are many interviews with Constable Bowden available on the internet, reported by CBC Television, CBC Radio, YouTube channel Black Nova Scotia, Truro News, The Pictou, and The Pictou Advocate, just to name some of them. The interviews also include the following. On June 24th of 2024, Brent Bowden discovered a banana peel on the windshield of his truck And at the same time, he found no other banana peels on any other vehicles in the Truro Police Services parking lot. Constable Bowden is of African descent. Sergeant Hunka and Constable Ed Cormier are white. Brent found security camera footage of Sergeant Hunka and Constable Cormier exiting the Truro Police Services station on June 24th, entering an unmarked police vehicle, who then drove past Brent's truck, at which time an arm can be seen tossing a banana peel onto his truck. Sergeant Hunka denied the allegation when initially questioned by Constable Bowden. However, later on, he would confess to tossing the banana peel onto Brent's truck in later meetings with the Truro Police leadership, the town of Truro representative, and with Constable Bowden present. Despite a member of the African community explaining to everyone in the meeting the racial context of the banana peel, the Truro Police Services and the town of Truro decided to take no disciplinary action against Sergeant Hunka and Constable Cormier. At the end of one meeting, Brent said he overheard Chief David McNeil say to another, "Imagine if this gets out." Then he watched Chief McNeil laugh. An image was later shown on the Truro Police Services Facebook website, acknowledging the impacted officer and stating, "Intentionally throwing a banana at a person of African descent will never be acceptable." Now, they meant a banana peel. However, later on, they removed that sentence. Now, to start off, I have a question for Kirk Johnson. Kirk, is tossing a banana peel by Sergeant Hunka onto Constable Bowden's truck a littering violation and nothing else? You have about 2 minutes.
No, it's not just a littering violation. It's a racist violation. As a young kid, at the age of 3 or 4, when we were in the city, this girl, she was 4 and her sister was 5 going to school, and her sister had a banana and said, "Oh, you want some bananas? You want some bananas?" Was just saying it to me. And her sister, her young 4-year-old sister, was saying, "Don't do that. Don't be rude to him." Even back then, they knew the difference the difference between what a banana mean to just give it to a black kid by himself. So as far as to say that this is not offensive, yes, it is. It's offensive, and it's a racist statement, and something really needs to be done about it, point blank.
I mean, deeply to the core, when you even hear as a black person that, using the banana peel as an example, like when I heard that initially, you didn't have to say nothing else. You just know internally how hurtful and how rude and disrespectful that is. And that's our feeling because we understand what racism is. And the fact that it is dismissed and not considered, even hurtful and harmful to Constable Brent Bowden, like it's completely disrespectful and frustrating to hear as a black person. But I could just imagine Brent being in that position, having to defend his own personal feelings of racism to his colleagues, and they laugh it off and dismiss it as if it's nothing. Like, there's a problem with that, and we have to do better. And that's why there's supposed to be mechanisms in place to make sure folks don't do that and continue that perpetuation of racism throughout all of our levels of systems.
And I'd like to add to that, if I may. Back in 1998, I brought Willie O'Ree here, the first black, to play in the NHL back in 1958 with the Boston Bruins. And I got 2 of his colleagues, Bill Riley, the first black Nova Scotian to play in the NHL back in 1974 with the Washington Capitals, and Chuck Maxwell, outstanding hockey player and baseball player from Truro. And the first thing Willie said to me, and the other 2, is that when Billy was playing with the Quebec Aces, him and Chuck, that they were recipients of people throwing bananas on the ice. And when Willie played in Detroit, I believe, somebody threw a black cat on the ice. So the connotation of throwing a banana has historically and hitherto is associated with referring to people of color as monkeys. And just recently, Mr. Kane, the hockey player, a banana was thrown on the ice, and the gentleman with the beard was showing peeling it and making the reference that this is a monkey. And we just seen the gentleman that they put in the White House in the United States referred to former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle as monkeys. So there's no misapprehension on the part of most of us that are in the know that this is systemically racist. It's structural racism. It's anti-black racism. It's systemic discrimination. And the fact that they're trying to conceal it and hide it is indicative of the cronyism we see in Eurocentric institutions.
So let me ask an interesting point. And now, Chief McNeil being the top person in leadership at your police, what do you think type of messages he's sending to his staff and to his organization?
Well, if I can touch on that, having been a former police officer for 30 years, growing up in Pictou County, Glasgow, seeing racism, living with it with some of my friends at East Pictou, especially in Glasgow in the area, but also later on in Dartmouth, but in police work, having witnessed it. Being around with individuals who don't want to accept or they want to turn a blind eye to what is real. And to go to Susie's point earlier, to use the word dismissiveness. It's one of the most blatant things people can do to each other, especially at a time like this, when we should be moving forward with everything we've learned about human behavior. We've learned about racism. We learned about it through the Colored Children's School here, the write-ups that come out many years ago. The institutions that house the indigenous communities over the years. White colonialism is still alive. And I know at times when I have spoken, all of a sudden, I've been ostracized. And some of my family have been treated different just because we stood up for something that we did not believe in, that we've seen the real effects of it. And for 3 white officers to be involved with this, it's a real discredit to policing as a whole, because thank God, 99.9% of the people that are in uniform are there for the good reasons, and we do have a few that still author that same type of behavior. And because other parts of the community, including you mentioned, some of the Truro people that have dealt with this, have literally turned a blind eye and say there was no harm done, basically, is what they're saying. It's dismissing Brent Bowden's feelings and emotions, what has happened to his mom and dad and family members, and to everyone at this table. So it has to be addressed. Can't be overlooked and ignored, and there's only one way to do that, is an honest apology and ownership and accountability.
That's right.
So now, when I looked at the videos on the internet, I recall Brent reported there was, in one meeting, there was more emphasis placed on him and the 2 officers to separate and go their own ways and, well, return to work. Now, in law enforcement, is there a chain of command and expectation that no matter what, you are supposed to report to your senior officers? You're from Canadian Armed Forces background as well, and you have law enforcement. But to our viewers, is there an expectation to obey your higher up, no matter what? Is there pressure?
Well, there may be pressure, but there's what they call a moral compass. And I've always had a moral compass as a senior non-commissioned officer in the Air Force and as a martial artist, someone that's practiced martial arts for 54 years. And the moral compass, we know right from wrong. Kirk just made a good example there of a young kid saying at 4 don't do that. So there's a understanding that we know what's right and wrong. Those that don't want to practice that, we have to call it what it is. They're white supremacists and they're racist. It's just that simple. And we have them here in this province. Indeed, we have them right across this country.
Yes.
But I, as a senior officer in the Canadian Air Force, would never stand for that kind of nonsense. And I would nip it in the bud at the outset to ensure that we set a standard so everybody understands that in addition to the policies and procedures, and I want to be clear, in the Canadian Armed Forces, they say that we have zero tolerance towards racism. Back in 1991, my captain referred to me as a nigger in nigger terms. And I had kids that were 8 and 10. And if I had no children, probably I'd be just getting out of a noose now, because I don't tolerate that kind of nonsense. So moving forward to where I'm at today, I knew it was wrong then, and I know it's wrong now. And that's why we as a group of colleagues and a coalition are here to support Brent to ensure that this nonsense has to be nipped in the butt and now.
Okay, great. Now, let's move on to the next section. So, Brent has asserted many concerns about multiple organizations. His union, Nova Scotia's Workers' Compensation Board, the Office of Police Complaints Commissioner, and Brent even made some recent developments with the Truro Police. Now, this section is going to be a little bit more complex, so I'm going to ask you, Rocky, can you help our viewers to give them an understanding of what's going on with these four organizations?
I have a protracted history with all four of those institutions over the last 33 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you for a certainty that they practice cronyism, and they close ranks, and notwithstanding that those people in positions of power know right from wrong, they support each other because of one thing: racism.
Yes.
That's it in a nutshell. I've dealt with the Office of the Police Complaints Commission and dealing with our RCMP officer, and he was stopped. I'll give you the succinct version. He was stopped on January 7, 2020, and by one police officer. They called for backup. They brought 5 more police officers there. He's a big man, 6'4", Maurice Carver, and when they brought the other officers, the guy didn't know who Maurice was, so we called for backup. The backup came. One came cold, and Daniel knows what cold means, but the lights. So Maurice said, "Well, why did you come cold?" What they didn't know is he had put his phone and recorded the entire incident. So at the end of it, one of the officers banged on his door, and Maurice is a big man. He's 6'5", 322 pounds. So he's not a baby, and so he's ominous just looking at him. But in any event, subsequent to that all transpiring, he called me and said, "I'm going to go down to the police station because I want to speak with at the time police chief Dan Kinsella." I said, "Don't do that. I want a paper trail, because they have convenient amnesia when it comes to racism."
Absolutely.
So we sent the paper trail. He sent it to me to review it at a little after 12. 4 in the morning, we got a response back from Dan Kinsella. He wanted him to go down and chat about it. What they didn't know is the next day, Rob Bell, who was the inspector with the RCMP, filed a code of conduct.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I guess what I was trying to get at is Brent's experience, in particular. I'm curious for our viewers, if you could tell our viewers, what is Brent's concerns about this union? In Workers' Compensation Board and the OPCC. What is Brent encountering? If someone could help us out with that.
Well, I mean, Brent has gone through all of the proper channels.
Okay.
And the fact that he has done all of this and there's still been no support, and now they're backing up to support him in different ways, but not to a point where, he's going to, like, had they had started initially done the work when he approached them about this situation, he wouldn't be through all of this these other levels of barriers. The union should have stepped up. They should have stepped in, and they should have protected their employee the way that they're supposed to do. Workers' comp should have absolutely have done the work that they needed to do to be able to provide support and training and anything else that he needed. They should have done this without going back to the employer that automatically said, no, we're not, this isn't a valid case. This isn't, and the fact that they went to the employer initially, instead of telling the employer, this is what you need to do, they listened to the employer and did what the employer wanted to do, which was not in the favor of the employee who these unions and these systems are supposed to protect. So because of that, here we are again, starting back at, square one, square two, where Brent and his family and his community have gone through so much. This is traumatic, to say the least, for in a number of levels. And the fact that he has to continue to fight this fight, not just for himself, but for other Nova Scotians and other people in this country that are experiencing these same situations, is absolutely absurd. And we have to stop doing this to the people that are experiencing this harm.
Yeah. Rocky, OPCC, we understand that there's interaction with the OPCC, and I believe they are obligated to abide by the Nova Scotia Police Regulations Act. Have they been complying with that?
In my humble opinion, no. And for our viewers, the OPCC is the Office of the Police Complaints Commission, and then specifically, we've initially in Brent's deed, we filed Form 5s. They went to the commissioner, Mr. Bill McDonald, and he sent them back saying that in fact they seem to be all similar or identical. And good friend and coalition partner with us, Brian Clyke, alerted me to the Police Regulations Act, specifically Section 31, and it says in there specifically that the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, he doesn't have the authority to arbitrarily deny, even if they're identical, he has to accept them. Right. And so I had to send a letter to Mr. McDonald, specifically underscoring and highlighting that. And I asked him to reverse it, which he did. And so he was also trying to preclude these same people from filing Form 13s, which go before the public. So that has been climbing Mount Everest without absent the Sherpas, but we are there now. So it's only a matter of time before this unfolds and we see the nefariousness of these institutions that want to pretend that the elephant in the room is not racism. And in fact, indeed it is.
Yes, it is.
Right.
If I may touch on this part, as a former police officer, and I was able to attain the rank of sergeant and acting chief at times in absence of our chief. So on occasion, I was in a position, even in the small town of Trenton, to be called upon to sit down with an officer and some citizens over some matters and stuff like that. So I know the responsibility that comes with that.
Yeah.
And what is really saddens me here is, and I have to go to this point because if it's being looked at the way I see it, credibility, which is utmost important in justice and law and order and fairness, equity and equality and everything else. And when I see that this had happened and then the person denies it, I like the idea, and I relate to military as well in this, is that I have an issue with a fellow officer. I will try to resolve that with that person. And it appears that Brent did that to no avail.
Yep.
So then he has the wherewithal to go in, search out the cameras, and gets it in living color. Yeah. So then the admission comes. To me, credibility and integrity has gone down the drain for that officer or those officers.
Yeah.
Hence, going forward with the chief, if that was put in front of you, and you talk about your moral compass, I don't know how I could go any further with that
Mhm.
and not have something done and have sensitivity training, major apology done, and possibly even put that officer or officers, especially the senior officer, I wouldn't say on suspension. I would have a meeting with Brent and his representatives and family, how they're affected by it. But I would hold them accountable and to be some disciplinary and action done to those individuals. And it wouldn't be where we're at today if it was handled that way. Because you got to look at credibility right off the top.
Now, in my understanding, and I may get this a little bit mixed up, but my understanding is I've heard that Brent has been requested, I'm not sure which organization, been requested to return to work. What do you feel about that?
I did talk to Brent about that last week. I called him when I heard about it. Brian, his dad, told me what the event took place since I was last involved. My first inclination was, what's going on here? Suspicious.
Right.
Very suspicious. Who's recommending it? Why are they doing it? But what else is going to come with it prior to him going back on the street in uniform? What's going to happen before? And I suggested at that moment, keeping all what I just said in mind, that if you don't go back, what's going to be the consequences? How are they going to use that against you?
Right.
Versus if you go back, what are you going into?
To face.
And I didn't use the word a hornet's nest,
No.
but that's basically where he'd be thrown right into the mix of it. Because if your leaders, regardless of what we're doing in life, if your leaders have shown a certain type of behavior, and they do it with disregard for fellow human beings, and especially with this issue of racism, and around Brent Bowden, a decorated soldier,
Yes.
and also someone who'd received awards for his policing to that point. That being said enough, it's a disgrace and it has to be handled. And I would be very skeptical and I'd have a lot of trepidation go back into the position if I was Brent.
Fair.
May I add to that? Because I think this is important and it's imperative. The fact that Brent, under the Union Act, he has the right to duty to accommodate. And I assisted Brent to have a duty to accommodate, but it's true, he's clinical counseling therapist. And a duty to accommodate, he is monitored by the therapist so that when he goes back, the therapist can monitor him on a daily basis. And they determine whether he goes back 2 hours a day, 2 hours a week, whatever the case is. And Chief McNeil has suggested he's ignoring the clinical counseling therapist and told him to come back on Monday and go to work. And I understand from Brent that if he doesn't go back, WCB is cutting off his funding. WCB has contacted back to cut his funding off. So this is retaliation. And under the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, specifically under Section 11, this is retaliation, and that is unlawful and illegal. And one more thing, as a consequence of Brent bringing this to light, Chief McNeil had 3 code of conducts that he posted against Brent, and he was supposed to go back on the 2nd of January, which he would have to stand for. They've vanished now. So as we get closer to the goalpost, they get more defenders at the goalpost. So this is really unconscionable.
I'd like to spend more time about. Sorry, you have something?
No, I was just going to say, it reminded me of my case. It seemed like they're punishing you for speaking up
That's right.
what is true. He spoke the truth. He told the truth, what happened, and what happened was wrong, and they don't want to make the guys take accountability for it. In my case, it was the same thing. They were saying Kirk Johnson is right, and also badge number 454, Michael Sanford, is right. How can that be possible if my cousin got 2 tickets, $2,000 tickets or whatever, and I got my car taken from me that night and I was left stranded? But yet we're both right. We can't be both right. So it's a hard situation that we're going through here. And it's almost to the fact that if you speak about racism, they're kind of punishing you for speaking about it. But the only way this is going to be fixed if they go about it the right way, and this is not the right way to go about it.
Okay, so
May I
Because,
just say, what a teachable moment
Yes.
and a learning
Yes.
experience that could have been for
Absolutely.
everybody.
100%.
yeah. Okay, we could probably spend a lot more time on this, as you see. And but I want to get to the next section, and we're going to go one level even higher now. For this next discussion, I wish to play an excerpt from the Nova Scotia Legislature question period from October 3rd of 2025.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Brent Bowden is an African Nova Scotian Truro police officer who has been on leave for months after a racist incident. He reached out to his MLA, to ministers, and even to the Premier, who agreed to meet with him. But he's only been bounced from office to office with no answers and no support. So, Madam Speaker, can the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs explain how can this government claim to be dismantling hate and racism while it can't even stand up for one person?
I recognize the honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the opportunity to say once again that there is no place for racism and hate in Nova Scotia. We have been abundantly clear about that. Madam Speaker, I also need to say, though, that I cannot speak about any individual cases that may be under investigation or before any courts or tribunals. So I'm not speaking to the incident that the member opposite was asking about. What I will say, though, Madam Speaker, is that this is something, racism is something that we have worked hard in our government to address. Madam Speaker, we have introduced first of its kind legislation on this very topic. Madam Speaker, as well, though, we respect our independent institutions that address these issues and are available for people if they have questions or concerns about these issues.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to say nope and nope because all of these ministers have been approached by this person and nothing has been done. So when we say there's no place for racism, let us be clear that that's what is being allowed right now. So this government loves to boast about the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act but with the racism that happened against Officer Bowden, there's been no accountability and no support. So the same is true on environmental racism. When we talk about racism, it covers lots of facets. Communities are still waiting to see the environmental racism report that's been sitting on the desk of various ministers for over a year. If this government is truly committed to dismantling racism, why is it keeping this report under wraps instead of releasing it and taking action?
Order. I recognize the honourable Minister of African Nova Scotia Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for, I think, the question. With regards to the Brent Bowden situation, as Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, I have toured this province this past summer, and we are supportive. We have offered support in this situation, and we will continue to do so. Our government is against racism. We support programs with regards to racism, and we will continue to do so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We saw the interaction between you, Susie, and Twala. It was rather short, and it only scratches really the surface. And it appears to be rather heated, if I may say. Now, back to Susie. Are the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, Twala, the Minister of Justice, and the Premier of Nova Scotia meeting their obligations to Constable Bowden and, by extension, Black Nova Scotians?
Absolutely not. I mean, if they were meeting their obligations, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And I think, you know, the government now, which is the Houston government, and previous governments have dropped the ball on protecting African Nova Scotians, Black Nova Scotians across this province, because they all have an opportunity to make change, to take action, to hold people accountable. And yet we continue to see them passing the buck to multiple departments, multiple stakeholders. And instead of supporting and doing the things that need to be done through legislation, which is law, they choose to put it in regulations. They choose to pass it down to municipalities. The minister was speaking about the Dismantling Hate and Racism Act. That act is words alone. There's supposed to be reports that are given by the municipalities, by other departments that are passed forward to us to let us know, you know, what's happening within these places and spaces that are, you know, structurally racist by nature. And we don't have any of that information. Why? Because it's just words on paper. We don't have no actions, no directives within any of those departments to follow through on what happens when racism or anti-Black racism or discrimination happens. Their direction is to pass you down to the Human Rights Commission. And the Human Rights Commission is now going through a modernization in which legislation by the government that we have right now that has mostly the complaints from folks that are going to be changing the rules or modernizing it, that is probably not going to benefit folks in Nova Scotia. It's going to continue to delay the processes and continue to traumatize folks across this province. So are they doing what they should be doing to address racism and discrimination across this province? Absolutely not. And as far as I'm concerned, people across this province have been feeling it. They talk about it, they file complaints, they follow processes. Brent has done everything possible to do the work that needs to be done to protect him and his family and his community. And we still see this government not taking accountability, not, you know, doing the things that need to be done to protect all Nova Scotians.
Yeah.
And a critical point in this is, you made mention, Ian, that on the 24th of June 2024, Brent filed a complaint. 29 days later, on the 23rd of July, absent his participation, the town of Truro sent an email out to the police chief and others and to the newspaper saying that they accepted the apology from the two officers that threw the banana or were involved in that. But nobody made mention if they solicited Brent to see if he was satisfied with what transpired. You know why? Because they know that didn't happen. So more disturbingly, if officers that have sworn an oath to serve and protect are going to do this to one of their own, do you think I would feel safe as a Black person in Truro? Because, and leadership starts at the top. And with this kind of behavior, what we see is Sergeant Honka is teaching all of the other police officers how to disrespect people of color. So, and I go back to what Danny said, my friend, a little earlier, the trust and respect is out the window. So why are they placating and stonewalling us instead of taking the accountability and responsibility that Bill 96, which is the dismantling racism and hate in this province, came into being last April. And since then, you'd think that they would have grabbed the bull by the horns. And as my friend here, Susie, says, they haven't done nothing. So they're giving us platitudes, empty platitudes.
So let me ask Susie. It sounds like a bit of a, like you said, stonewall, and maybe a hitting a wall. So for our citizens, our viewers, so what can they do if they feel compelled to speak up?
Well, I mean, we should never stop fighting. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we shouldn't be fighting, but I don't want anyone to think that, you know, we shouldn't be speaking up for these things that are happening. Whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you're any other race, if you see something wrong, you should be speaking up about it. And in this instance, you know, Brent had to speak up for himself amongst his own peers who should know the justice system, who understand laws and legalities to this. And yet here he is being treated less than, treated like he's not. And we all have a role to play in helping to protect and support each other in these processes, which is why we build this coalition, because we can't stop this until every one of us feels safe in our workplaces. Everyone should feel safe in our environment, and until that happens, we should continue to fight.
Yeah, I guess me being more detailed oriented, I guess what I'm looking for is who do citizens speak to? Do they call their MLA,
Yes.
write out their, or like that's what I mean. What concrete instructions will you have for our viewers?
So my suggestion would be write to the Premier. As the leader of the province, they have an obligation to work within all their departments. Write to your Premier, write to your MLA, write to your councillors, write to all of those folks that are involved in this work. In this particular incident, it's the police organization. Write to these folks and explain to them why it's wrong. And everybody should be flooding their emails, flooding, their offices, so that they know that this is unacceptable. I mean, at a certain point, folks will be tired of seeing and hearing from folks, and hopefully they move the needle to do the work that needs to be done. But I think we can't stop talking and voicing our concerns about what this looks like for people across Nova Scotia.
If I may on this too, back up what Rocky said and also Susie said, what's wrong with asking the coalition of churches to come together?
Right.
Other agencies, other interest groups in the communities locally, to stand up against this situation, because if it happened and it's swept under the rug, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And it's not, here's the other side. There's so many other victims. I am sure, and some people may not care or say not even they deserve it, but those officers, those white officers, do they think that their children and their families aren't being affected by this kind of spillover? You're darn right they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Then I think of our being sworn in as a cop and a police officer. One of the first things stood out to me, and we talked earlier, Susie. We're a peace officer before we're
That's
a police
right.
officer.
That's right.
And if I can't bring peace to my local community with trust and integrity for everybody, where are we going to end up?
That's right.
And the other thing is, you think of Brent, if he was by himself
Yeah.
and he didn't have the family support
right.
and the group of people that came to surround him, what would it be like for him?
Yeah.
Now, I believe, Kirk, you have something to
So
say?
23 to 25 years later, because my case
Yes.
started in 98 and it finished in 2003, we should have learned from that.
That's right.
And I remember my father saying, well, Kirk, I do what I do. I'm an activist. And my uncle, Bruce Johnson, they all said to do what they do so they can make it better for us in the future. So when I went through what I went through, my father said, well, did we really make it better? So then, I'm a big time boxer or what have you, got a lot of media out there. And I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to really push and really make it better. I didn't ask for this situation, but I said, I'm going to make it better. And when I was going through the process, I was proud because that's, I can make a change. But right now, you know what? Did I really make that change? I mean, what's going on with Brent right now is showing me like, if that was that change forgotten? Was that situation, all that hard work forgotten? So right now they need to do the right thing. And it's like when you bring up a kid, if you just let the kid do whatever they want to do and never tell them the right thing, they're going to continue to do it. So with the police department, like you said, 99% of the police department is a good police department. But when you have these bad apples, you got to get rid of the bad apples. So
right.
so we can get on a right road of doing the right thing. Bottom line.
Okay, we'll go ahead to move on to our next topic. And we touched, you started talking about, it's about the Human Rights Commission. So I've heard that Brent has submitted a complaint to the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and it's in the queue to be processed. And I was looking on the Human Rights website, and I found this statement by the Commission's website. It mentions on February 27th of 2025, and I'll read it out here. It's just the 3 paragraphs. There's a lot more. It says, the government announced plans to modernize the way Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission protects the rights of Nova Scotians and administers the province's human rights complaints process. This comes in response on calls for improvement. The human rights landscape in Canada and internationally has never been more complex, and the systems and institutions that administer human rights laws are more important than ever. We've heard from the members of the public that they are concerned about the timeliness and access to justice. We share these concerns and welcome the government's commitment to strengthening our abilities to respond to the evolving needs of an increasing diverse society. Now, like I said, this is only the first 3 paragraphs because of time constraints. I can't read the whole thing. This was published by Joseph Fisher, the director and CEO of the Human Rights Commission. It's on their website if viewers want to read it. So, Rocky, you've had a lot of experience as a human rights advocate. And Susie, you're the official opposition and critic for Human Rights Commission. So, you two, what are your thoughts about this statement?
Well, I mean, when we think about modernization, yes, we do have to change the way we do things, and there is probably a more efficient way to do that work. But my worry is that when we change these processes, who gets left out? What are the gaps that are going to happen? And who are we consulting? Like the Human Rights Commission was established for Black Nova Scotians because of the way that they were treated within the systems. And when you think about, because I've contacted them about this particular case, and my advice from the Justice Minister and his department was they're an independent body. We don't interfere with that. That type of cases and the work that they do. They're just an independent body separate from the government. But yet, the government's going to modernize these processes, and they're also going to probably create more of a barrier for our people to be able to access these services. Now, if I had my eyes on what they were proposing to change, it would be wonderful if our communities had consultation to be able to have these conversations to help, craft and foster that work. It would be great, but we have in front of us a change that's going to happen that, I mean, right now people are waiting for human rights cases for years. You waited 5 years for yours.
5.5
and
years.
even more so because now they have limited staff. And so we're going to tell people who are experiencing these harmful situations in their lives to go to the Human Rights Commission and endure trauma for multiple years of their lives. Most people give up. Most people don't even want to file. Tons of folks are saying, why even bother? And that's another determinant for them to be able to access the justice that they need. And so I would hope that, the modernization would help folks that are actually experiencing these types of issues, give them the justice that they need, and in more of an efficient way to help them, receive the justice that they deserve from whatever that case is. And we don't see that with this government. Everything that's happening within this Houston government is secretive, it's behind closed doors, and we're not actually talking to the people that are actually experiencing these types of issues. So, I don't know what's about to happen, but I really wish that they would consult folks that have actually gone through this and worked through, these processes so that we can actually get some justice for folks in Nova Scotia.
And let me accentuate what Susie said. I've been dealing with the Human Rights Commission since 1993. It came into existence back in 1977, and she's correct. It was for Black people. They have 2 lawyers there, and they have 2 investigators in a province in excess of 1 million people. I've filed complaints there, several over the years, but in particular, one complaint I filed against somebody in correctional services. I've waited 8 years. They just started doing the investigation 3 weeks ago. What I see happening with the Human Rights Commission here in Nova Scotia is that I've butted heads with one of the senior people there because I don't have any faith in them. And in particular, a case that I took on with another individual where we were offered a settlement. The person waited a year. I seen them creeping on my LinkedIn account, alleged that I was threatening them. They dismissed my case because when they dismiss your case, the only recourse you have is to go to the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia, which I did. And I'm waiting for the response from that. But I want to be unequivocally clear. As a community advocate, I write legal briefs. I go to the boards of inquiries, tribunals, mediations, resolutions, the whole gambit. And in particular, with the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission between 2016 and 2020. 6 black people from Nova Scotia went there. They were turned away 4 times. 4 times, each of them. I went with them once. I met with the senior analyst. His name is McPherson, Darryl McPherson, and he said, "Ruben, these are systemic racism issues." And the individual, the intake officer, Mr. Ewan, in my humble opinion, is a racist. Now, I'm saying that only because he immediately said to me, "I'm going to accept all of these because this is systemic racism." I understand he's been moved from there, and regrettably, Mr. McPherson has passed away, but he was a fair individual in that institution. And I heard from a senior person in there that told me, we have systemic issues in here.
Okay, we could probably go on more, but we're starting to run out of time, okay? So our next section is, so I suspect that some people may think the Brent Bowden situation might be just an internal matter between Constable Bowden, his employer, True Police Services, and perhaps Chief David McNeil, that doesn't really require special attention and really doesn't concern them. So, Danny, should this be a concern to all Nova Scotians? And,
Yes.
Why?
I definitely believe it should be a concern, without a doubt. As I said earlier, I'll reiterate it again. If it had been taken care of properly, we wouldn't be where we're at. But the fact that it's here tells us that there's a multitude of agencies and groups and government officials that are involved in this, and they have far-reaching tentacles across the province that can put pressure on individuals who have a moral compass and who are struggling with it because they're feeding families. They sometimes lack the courage or the discernment of when to jump in and throw that right cross, like to relate to Kirk. When you got to go and deliver that knockout punch, or stand back, take a breath, and look at the whole picture. The people of Nova Scotia should be feeling very safe when they see the lights go on in a police car, or they hear a siren, or they're walking the beat and they see, or the police are walking the beat like they should be a lot more often. They shouldn't have any types of fear. And if there was anything, and going back to my point of bringing peace as a peace officer, we can welcome our individuals back in the community, which I'm proud of in the town of Trenton, for the most part. If one of the boys, or mostly guys that come home from the institutions, we welcome them to come in 24 hours a day. We go for a coffee with them if you get that stinking thinking. Police can do that instead of pulling up in the police car and saying, "How effing long you going to be out? We got our eyes on you. Didn't take you long the last time to go back." That kind of stuff goes. That creates a dissension, and it causes a gap instead of us bringing people together. I believe the police can be a conduit to peace and equality and equity in this world. But it has to start in here. I would like to, at this time, call out fellow police officers who are non-Indigenous, non-African Nova Scotian, people of the white color brought up with the white privilege, to stand up, let your voice be heard, be allies and advocate. You don't have to attend everything, but you can make your voice heard once. And it can go a long way when it goes to the Houston government.
Absolutely.
And others.
Thank you.
You're here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, when you talk about, is it everybody's business? Let's take, for example, MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. If a mother loses her child, is it just the police's job to ensure and be vigilant about people that are drinking and driving? Or should it be all of ours? If I see somebody drinking and driving, do I have a fiduciary and a legal obligation to call the police and say, "Listen, I see somebody swerving, and I'm not doing it because I'm a tattletale. I'm doing it because I'm trying to save their lives and the lives of somebody else." So racism has the same nefarious outreach. If for 1 second, we see this in America now. We see that these bandits under ICE are murdering white people. And white people are now saying, "Oh, America has slipped into a third world country state. It's been a third world since we were enslaved from Africa in 1604. So, no, it's new to them. And I'm saying, welcome to our world. We told you about it. And Mama used to say, if you don't hear, you feel.
That's right.
So they're feeling.
And they knew about it.
They knew.
Okay, so
Could I just finish on that one note?
okay.
For the people that are out there in Nova Scotia, you should be concerned.
Yes.
Because it could be on your doorstep.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And you never know when and how and who's going to commit the act.
That's right.
And that's what happens a lot of times, that people, if it's not here, they put their head in the sand, the ostrich, this kind of
Yeah.
Okay,
action. So,
great.
sorry.
Oh, no problem. So we're almost out of time. In 30 seconds or less for each of you, what is the one thing that you want the audience to take away from this conversation? So we'll start with Susie, and then we'll work our way around and with Rocky. And so Susie.
Thank you. We all hold a responsibility to do the right thing, and our moral compass is what guides us. And when we start veering away from doing the right thing, we start having harm within our community and people experiencing things like this. So let us not veer away from that. Let us do the right thing. Let us stand up, each and every one of us, to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. So we all have a role to play. Let us do that and do it together.
To build on that, we do have a role. We have purpose in this earth.
Yeah.
And as long as we have been put in positions of trust and in the area of working with our fellow human beings, we do have an obligation and responsibility. And that's why I'm here. I could not turn my head to this and not take this offer. I feel honored and privileged to be here, and there's more work to be done, and we got to do it together.
That's right.
There's days I tell my Indigenous friends and the men that I meet, there's days I might have to stand out in the front and take it on the chin for you. There's other days I'll lock arms with you on the highway. And there's other days I'll stand here and you can turn around and know I got your back.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. You're not going
right.
to get sucker punched in
That's
the dark of the night.
Well, when you say moral is not just for regular everyday people. It's for everybody. Everybody in the world, police officers, the prime minister, the American president, for everybody. But we all got rules that we have to stand behind and stand with. And if we break those rules, for instance, you speed, anybody speed, we're going to get a ticket, right? And they give you a ticket because they want you to keep it in your mind about these rules. So when we break a rule, well, a ticket need to be given. And with Brent's case, the ticket wasn't given to the officer, and that's why we are in this situation. 23 years later, after my case, this should have gotten better, but it didn't. And also, let me just say one thing before I finish. In my case, it was a situation because I had the human rights, but also I had my own personal lawyer, and that was $100,000. That made the difference. Everybody can't afford that.
Yes.
We need to make it better that normal everyday people can afford or can be able to speak out about some type of injustice that was done to them, instead of going through the thing I had to go through and going through what Brent is going through. It's like you're telling us from speaking out on what's right, you're telling us we did something really bad. That you're punishing us that way. So it needed to change totally.
Yes.
I believe that inclusivity, equity, and equality is a fundamental construct that we need in this country and indeed around the world. Things always improve when you get the perspective from various cultures and groups, and we are all under the human race. 36 years ago, a lot of people told me when I was taking on the military for racism, why are you wasting your time? They're not going to win. But sometimes, and I tell people, you walk by faith and not sight alone. That's what I did for 35 years. And after 35 years, you mentioned the settlement of $150 million. I told the law firm, put that to the side. I'm not interested in money. I'm interested in the implementation of systemic and institutional measures within the Canadian Armed Forces. We did that on the 19th of August, 2019. 7 years later, I'm still fighting for Black and racialized people in the military that are still feeling racism. So we're talking about a construct, and the construct is systemic racism.
Yes.
And we have to dismantle it.
That's right.
And I'm one of those individuals, and I'm with a group called Alarm. We're right around the world, and we are trying to dismantle racism around the planet. Is it going to take a minute? My sons were 10 and 12 when I started my fight. They're now going on 47 and 45.
Yeah.
But guess what? By the grace of the Creator and the ancestors, we made it.
That's right.
So, Brent, we want you to understand, my
Yes,
friend, we are
yes.
walking with you till the end of the road.
Yes.
And we hope that Nova Scotians who have a legacy of being kind and compassionate and empathetic, that you will raise that flag again and walk with us
Yes.
to the victory line here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So this wraps up our discussion. My thanks to all our panel members for their insights. I'm Ian Mohammed, and thank you for watching.
That was a panel discussion on the Brent Bowden matter and the wider concerns it has generated. In the interest of balance, we reached out to the relevant institutions, including the Truro Police Service and other stakeholders for comment ahead of publication. In a public statement, the Truro Police Service stated that the matter was taken seriously, an investigation was conducted, and based on the evidence reviewed, the allegation was not substantiated as being intentional or motivated by racism or hate. At the time of release, responses received have been duly noted, and efforts to gather perspectives remain ongoing. Thank you for watching.